Perfect. Okay, thanks everyone. I know we're a minute or two late, but hopefully you are ready for our third and the best yet, I don't know, Logic Apps webcast.
That's better every time.
It does, right? It does. So we've got some cool stuff to show you as always. And we are going to be doing Q&A again as well. I think I've made it a little bit easier to find this time too. So if you go ahead and open, if you're watching this live and you see on your screen, it will say like you can join this Hangout. If you click that on the right-hand side of the video viewer, you should see an option for you to ask questions. So if we see those pop up, we'll go ahead and answer them before the broadcast ends. But just first off, thanks everyone again for joining. It's been a pretty cool last month. We've been working hard. We've got some stuff to show you, some demos of new functionality like do until and SDK, and Kevin's always got his good announcements. Actually, let's do a little introduction. So I'm Jeff Holland, working here at Logic Apps, and
Steven Siciliano, PM for Logic Apps.
Kevin Land, also PM of Logic Apps.
Perfect. So there's been some awesome stuff. Hopefully you're following us on Twitter at LogicApps.io. We always encourage you to reach out to us on Twitter or through the forums. You'll see we're very active. We've seen some awesome Logic Apps recently. I think just over the weekend, someone created a Logic app with one of our connectors that we have on GitHub. So if you didn't see last month, we did announce that we have kind of an open source GitHub repository where we're showing some API apps that you can leverage in your Logic app that aren't yet in the marketplace yet. We started with, I think, 3. One was Azure Storage Queue, a C# and a JavaScript API app to let you execute JavaScript in C#. And since then, since our last webcast, we've added a few more. We added an Azure Resource Manager one, as well as an Event Hub one and a Notification Hub API app, which are great. Event Hub too, if you're doing anything with Stream Analytics, it's cool to be able to push Stream Analytic events into an Event Hub, which could trigger a Logic app, which opens up some fun IoT stuff. So that's been great. Like I mentioned, we had a community blog post recently by someone who used the Notification Hub GitHub to create a alert and a Logic app to help monitor his son's artificial pancreas, which was pretty sweet, a pretty cool use of one. We've seen some other people doing some creative things with SQL, so we'll continue to retweet those and share them. So let us know what you've been able to do. Getting into it, I've got a quick little demo. I want to show how the do until can be used just really quickly, and then we're going to let Steven show some stuff, and we'll go with Kevin from there. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to do a little bit with this do until. Let's see. You know what? I'm just going to share my entire screen so I make sure I get all the right stuff. I know. Never know. And oh, we're going into infinite. Okay, here we go. Okay, so here is, let's see, is sharing your screen. Okay, great. I want to make sure that is. So for this do until, just this morning, I threw together this really quick and not very intelligent API application just to showcase how this is used. And you can see all the logic is saying is if the count is divisible by 10, so I find the modularity of the current count, then I'm going to return, oh, that's, you know what? That's why it's not working. That's hilarious. Anyway, I'm actually going to return okay. And if it is divisible by 10, I'm going to return not yet. Oh, just kidding. Yeah, that's right. Just kidding. It was right before. Sorry. Don't question my code live. Okay. So if it's not divisible by 10, so if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or any of those ones, 11, 12, it's going to return not yet. But once it gets divisible by 10, so 1 out of every 10, it's going to return the body is just going to say okay, right? So it's really simple. And the reason I'm doing this is you might be calling APIs within your Logic app that have some type of a condition. Maybe you're waiting for something to provision. Maybe you're waiting for some type of a status. And natively, we support kind of asynchronous before where you could return, I think it's a 429 with a retry policy. But just in case you're not working with one of those APIs, do until now allows you to set conditions and tell your Logic app to execute this action until you get the response that you're looking for or until something happens. Now, if you look at the description to this video, I actually posted a link to the do until documentation. It's part of the actions and triggers documentation. So you can look at that. It breaks down the different parameters. There's one very related to it called the retry policy, which is more specifically if you're making sure you want to get a 400 OK instead of a 500 response if you're working with HTTP. But I encourage you to look at those. But if you look here at this simple Logic app, I've just got an HTTP request going to that phony API app I have, and I say, okay, I want to have a timeout of 1 second, and this is in ISO, what, 6407 format? The standard ISO format, right? So that's saying, do a timeout of 1 second, try this up to 25 times, you can max it out at 1,000, and do this until I get the body okay, right? So it's gonna execute this HTTP request. If it gets back a body that's not yet, it's gonna say, okay, I need to do this again and again and again. I set it to 25, but really it only needs to be 10 based on that, which is nice because now when I run this logic app, I can go ahead and run it. It's going to hit that API app, and the first 9 times it hits it, it's going to get a not yet, but it will continue to retry and to retry and to retry. You see I was testing it just a few minutes ago until finally it hits that okay, at which point it's going to send me that email. So I just wanted to show that really quickly, show how it kind of fits together and share that documentation so that you can see how that works. And again, you can look into that. So just a quick little demo showing do until. The docs are there if you want to use this in your own logic app. So that's all for this one. Steven, you've also got a nice little thing you want to, oh, there's our, let's minimize that just so we don't get the infinite worlds. Okay. Let's go ahead and open your screen. There we go. Okay, Steven.
So we've mentioned this in previous calls, but we've been working on a SDK that allows you to use .NET to manage your logic apps. So we're happy to say that'll be available imminently, probably later today, if not tomorrow. So you can see here, this is the SDK test that I wrote. So I can just show you the types of things you can do with the SDK. So the first thing, well, it's a NuGet, so it'll be on NuGet.org. You can use it inside of your .NET apps if you want. And then the first thing you have to do is you have to set up the credentials to use with the SDK. So here I'm actually using a feature where I can prompt for my authentication. So you'll see that. So that's what the login with prompt function is. If you want, and what's more likely you're going to do is you're actually going to set up an application with a client ID and client secret, and you'll use that for like an automated system in the back end to run something, because you don't want to prompt somebody every time you want this thing to run. But this was just a little easier for the demo purposes. And then what we do is we create the logic management client. So this is the new feature that we have here. And when you create the client, you need to provide it with a global variable, which is the subscription ID. So this is just a subscription ID of my test. And then what you can do is you can list workflows by subscription. So the client itself has a few different subsections, I guess you could call it. Oops. There we go. So you can see the client has credentials, but it has a number of clients that you can use. You can manage the access keys for your workflow, the actions inside of runs, the runs themselves, the trigger histories. So every time that we attempted to run the triggers themselves, and the versions of the workflow definition. So you can manage any of those, but for this, I'm just going to list all of the workflows in my subscription. You can see here the operations that I can do on a workflow. So in addition to listing workflows, you can start them, you can create new ones, you can delete them, you can disable or enable them, you can get an individual one, you can list them inside the resource group, etc. So a lot of great stuff that you can do. And of course, all of these support both synchronous and async functions. If I was designing this for real, I would use async because async await is awesome and beautiful. But just for purposes of the demo, pretend we're using sync functions. So what this little app that I wrote is going to do is it's going to go to my subscription, list all of the workflows that I have, and then for each workflow, it's going to list all of the runs, and for each run, it's going to list all the actions. Nice. And then it'll give me a summary across my entire subscription of when the actions have happened and what exactly happened inside of them.
That's nice too, because even this morning I was going through one of my workflows, this test one, and you can do all this with the management API, but you kind of have to do one call, then look at it in the other, being able to kind of loop through and iterate like this super quickly. That's awesome functionality.
Yep. Well, you'll see how quick it is, but somewhat quickly maybe. So you can see here, I'm just enumerating over the workflows. So this is the workflow object, and you can see pretty easily that properties of the workflow object here. It's everything that you've seen if you've seen any of the REST documentation, or even if you go to the portal and look at the properties of the workflow, they're all available to you here. So things like when the workflow is created, the definition of the workflow, the state, tags, all those things. So here I'm just getting the resource group and the name, and then I'm using that workflow runs client to list all of the runs inside of this particular workflow. So this right here, this represents the particular run object. And then here you can see for runs, we have a variety of statistics you can take advantage of. So there's the start time. There is also the core ID, which is the that unique GUID that links all of the actions inside the run together. And of course, there's status, which is what I'm going to use here. And you can see here that I'm taking advantage of the status. I'm just converting it to a string. And then what I'm doing is I'm actually enumerating all of the individual actions inside of the run. So you can see here, I pass the run name into the workflow run actions list function. And then inside that, I created a little a super simple data table implementation, which you can see down here. And it just basically generates 24 buckets. So basically the last day, and it just increments a counter in a dictionary. So something very, very straightforward. That's all that's doing. So what I can do is I can go ahead and run this. And the first thing it's going to do up here is it's going to prompt me for my credentials. So I can, nope, my name. I think everybody already knows my email address, right?
I know. I thought I almost did a Twilio connector in my demo today, but I'm like, do I really want my phone number posted on here?
Yeah, exactly.
I guess your email's all right.
Okay, and then what I'm actually going to do now
But
is
feel free to send Steven some e-cards.
yes, we have two-factor auth set up here at Microsoft, which means it's actually going to send me a push notification to my phone, which I have to respond to. And once I do that, it will proceed. And now what it's going to do is it's going to go off and it's going to start listing. For the first call is list all of the workflows, and then inside that, it's listing all the runs. And you see I turned on the debug output here, so you can see all of the calls that it's making. And what was that?
You don't have that bit.
No, I don't really. So you can see this goes. I already ran this beforehand, so you can see how fast it is, because it's kind of a, is this an n cubed operation for each workflow? It's getting each run.
Right.
No, because list actions is on the run, so it's only number of workflows times number of run calls. But anyway, you can see how fast it's going. So I'm not gonna sit here and wait for this, but I will just show the Excel file that this thing output. So it just output a CSV.
Oh, wow, cool.
So here you can see the hours ago and the number of runs that were in each of the categories. So in this case, all of my runs are failing. But you can see here for the action results, this is the number that failed, the number that skipped. If I had a healthy subscription, most of them would actually be succeeded. And I just created a little chart. The chart didn't come in the file. I added that. But you can see here, this is essentially the last 24 hours. Now is right here, and this is actually going back in time. That's the way I did it. And a data series for each of the action statuses. And you can see, about 8 hours ago, there was a bunch of stuff that happened. A bunch of actions got skipped in my subscription. But you can see generally it's pretty steady. Must have a couple workflows that are just running right now and failing miserably at running. But yeah, so that is the SDK, and you can see it's making decent progress.
It's cool. It's easier than doing this through Postman and having to find all the names and doing whatever. So it's good.
Exactly. It's all strongly typed objects, so you can write code like date times are actually date times. Really, really pretty easy to use. So for managing your workflows, if you like .NET and you want to use it, I would definitely recommend playing with this. Like I said, we should get it released later today or tomorrow. Big caveat, it is a preview SDK, like the rest of Logic Apps is preview, so we reserve the right to change it and make updates, and there may be breaking changes in future major versions of the SDK, so just keep that in mind. But yeah, that's
what I wanted to share.
Fantastic.
Great. Okay.
They're not seeing our faces a lot today. I guess that's probably for the best. We'll probably actually,
It's
yeah.
early.
Should we
Yeah.
just switch over to the PowerPoint? Oh, we're not spoiling it this time like we did last time. I'll just keep it in reading view. Okay.
I just want to switch.
Yeah, no, they can't even see us, so you can move spots if you want.
All right, so today I'm going to talk about what's new. One of the things I'm really excited about talking about is everything we promised the last time we've delivered. So first, moving logic apps across subscriptions. Now you have the full capability of being able to move logic apps, not only rename them, move them across resource groups, but now also move logic apps across subscriptions. Template starters and the integration into the designer. So we've had templates in the marketplace that you can go ahead and use to help you start with your logic apps. We've tried a new experience that when you first open your designer that's with an empty logic app, it will give you an option to actually select one of the templates to get started with, or of course you can still start with an empty logic app. But now that you have a nice integrated experience in the designer itself. Wait action. We actually didn't announce this last time. I'm not sure why we didn't announce it. But we do have a wait API app that's in the marketplace, but we thought it would be best to actually have that functionality native to the engine. So now you can actually have an action call in the middle of your logic app to wait. You can either wait for a certain period of time or wait until a particular point in time. Configurable retry. So we got that out. So now you can add a retry policy to your request so that on failure of the request, you can set the number of times it will retry and the time between retries that you can wait for until the next time it tries. Today we only have a fixed interval, but you can also set it to none, so don't retry. And in the future, we'll add other types of intervals. And you saw the great demo by Jeff about do until polling. Yay!
That really advanced
Really
back
advanced.
end.
But it's actually a very common scenario.
It is.
Hey, please, keep calling this endpoint until I get 200 with content as opposed to 200 with no content or something like that.
Yep.
There are plenty of services out there that require that polling, and there are lots of other scenarios. You can even think about other ways to call child workflows, more complicated things. And Stephen showed you our new Azure Logic App Management SDK. So now you can write your own tooling if you like. If you didn't want to go in the portal to go and do interrogation of your logic apps, you can actually now write your own desktop tool to go do that, or console app. So what's coming up?
Should we just wait here, cut the video, and just...
That'd be me. Done. Webhooks. So webhooks will now give us some great capabilities in being able to design our logic apps. The first part is going to be a manual trigger type with a schema validation. So what that means is today you can do a run on your logic app, but we'll allow you to define a webhook so that you can actually trigger the workflow yourself. And that'll give you a couple of things. One, with the schema validation, you can add a JSON schema so that if a message that's passed in doesn't match that schema, it will not instantiate the workflow. It will also allow you to add multiple of these triggers to your workflow, giving you essentially routes into your workflow, so you can make different determinations in your workflow depending on who called it or how it was called. Static endpoints. So today, when you do the run command, if you look at that resource URI, it's going to include the subscription and the resource group name. Of course, we've added these great capabilities to allow you to move your logic apps across resource groups and subscriptions. So that would not work very well if you had code that was running against that. So we realized that shortcoming, and along with the move capability, we also made the endpoint static, so that you don't have to change your code if you move your endpoints, your logic apps around, and continue to have it run. And finally, a webhook action. What this will enable you to do is, in the middle of your workflow, you can get triggered by an event. So instead of having to build your own logic about getting a list of items and then iterating through that list, and now we have do until polling, so that would have made it a little easier. You can actually just wait for a new document to come into your list, or wait for some event. And so we handle all of the underlying communication with the API app or the endpoint to go and wait for the event to return a success and invoke the workflow.
That's a big one. That's
So,
very
yes,
cool.
that's going
Open
to
up
be-
a lot of possibilities.
That's going to be great. So that's, the webhooks is a big investment that we're making. So that's occupying a lot of our time. And we think it's going to create a nice ROI for everybody else. Something else I'd like to announce is that we have a couple new connectors that are coming out, a Bing Translate connector and a Bing Search connector. Bing Translate will allow you to input a string and the desired output language, and will translate that for you. And Bing Search is, as you would expect, being able to do a search against Bing and get some results back. So that's it. That's what we have coming down the pipe. And if you like a certain feature, please vote for it on our forum. If that feature doesn't exist, add it, and that's a great way to help us prioritize and know what's important to you guys.
Perfect. Awesome.
Let's do this. I'm going to switch through here so that you can have this in the webcast. There's a sample retry policy. So all this information is on MSDN. So I've just actually snipped this from MSDN, but you can see an example of the retry policy. You can also see an example of the wait and how you would actually implement a wait inside of your Logic app. And finally, an example of do until, and this just may be easier than looking at your code screen.
Yep.
So then that's it.
Perfect. Awesome. Great. So now we get to switch back to our wonderful faces and see if there's any questions that popped up, and also potentially watch our screens go nuts. Okay.
Oh, that must have confused me.
I know. Okay, it doesn't look like we've got any questions that have popped up yet, so that's easy enough for us. Feel free, if you've got questions, if you're watching the recording of this, send us a tweet, head over to the Logic Apps forum. We will be responding to those, and we always do respond to those. Again, check out our GitHub as well. I did fail to mention we did have some community submissions in our community repository. So if you head over to github.com/logicappsio, in the community section, there's actually 3 APIs linked to there. And we'd encourage you to, if you've got APIs that you want us to showcase on that, feel free to submit a pull request or send us an email, and we'll do that as well. So that's it for today. Thanks again for joining. We will be doing another one next month. So subscribe to this channel or follow us on Twitter or both, and we'll make sure that we let you know when that next one's coming for next month. So thanks, everyone.
I'm gone.
Thank you.